Everyone is selling the secret to growing on YouTube. Post more consistently, make better thumbnails, write catchier titles. But here's the brutal truth. It's not always the obvious strategies that are holding you back. Often it's small, invisible traps which are silently killing your growth. I launched this channel over the holidays with the goal of hitting 10,000 subscribers within the first 90 days of this year. But I missed that by 19 days. And now I'm fully aware that's much faster growth than the average channel, but I had the unfair advantage of having worked for a decade as a creative director, launching brands to hundreds of millions of people before I started this channel. Without that advantage, these same traps would have cost me years, not days. Which is why in this video, I'll be revealing the 10 invisible traps that are likely sabotaging your channel right now, and the lessons that they taught me the hard way, that had I known them sooner, would have saved me months of painful trial and error and frustration. Okay, so lesson 1. Your audience doesn't actually care about you. They care about what you can do for them. And when I started creating content, I spent way too much time worrying about how I was being perceived. Was I likable enough? Was I credible enough? Was my real personality coming through for the camera, or was it making me feel unnatural? And all of that worried energy was completely wasted because the reality is people are coming to your content for themselves, not for you. When was the last time that you watched a YouTube video just to make the creator feel good? Likely never. You watched them because you wanted to learn something or to solve a problem or just to be entertained. This realization was actually incredibly freeing. Once I understood that it wasn't personal, that viewers were simply making practical decisions about where to spend their attention, I stopped taking low views or quick drop-offs as personal rejections, and instead I started asking better questions. What problem am I actually solving here? How quickly am I delivering value? Too quickly or not quickly enough? Is this sentence or paragraph actually valuable, or am I just trying to look smart? Now, people may eventually come to care about you, but only after you've consistently delivered value to them first. It works really just like any relationship. Trust and connection come after a pattern of positive experiences. So stop obsessing over being liked and start obsessing over being useful. Because the fastest path to growth isn't being the most charismatic creator with the best screen presence. It's being the one who most consistently solves real problems for your audience. Okay, so lesson 2. There's a common assumption nowadays that because everything is digital and freely available, that it should in fact be free. And largely this is increasingly more true. Everywhere you look, there's free content and free tools and even free products. As consumers, we've all come to expect a lot from free, for better or worse. But when we cross over to become creators, something funny happens. We start thinking, I'm giving away all this free content, people should be more grateful. And then we get frustrated when it feels like they aren't. And I caught myself feeling this way early on. I would literally sit here and stare at my retention graphs or views and say to myself, I spent weeks making this video, why aren't people appreciating it more? Or even if every single point isn't life-changing, surely they can find pieces of it valuable. Or I'd see a notification of a negative comment come through and I'd instantly roll my eyes and wish I could comment back, informing them that they didn't have to leave that comment. They could have just not watched and clicked off of it if they didn't like it. It's not like they paid for it. And please tell me in the comments if that feeling sounds familiar so I know I'm not alone in that. But the thing I didn't realize at first is that the truth is nothing is really free. Everything costs something. Your time, your energy, your attention, or someone else's. And as a creator, you need to understand that even your free content isn't really free. Every piece of content you put out has a hidden price tag. It costs you the time and energy to create, but more importantly, for your audience, it costs them time and attention to consume it. And your audience values their time more than anything. For many, it's their most precious resource. So if you're creating content that wastes their time by being unclear or unfocused, or if it's low quality, they won't stick around. And At best, they'll bounce to something else because they know they could be spending their time in much more valuable ways. And at worst, they'll feel cheated. And this is why wasting your audience's time is one of the worst things you can do as a creator. If they give you a chance, it's on you to make sure that time is well spent. It's not on them. This ultimately means that you need to stop taking feedback personally. When someone says, this video starts too slow, or I didn't get the point, or video starts at 5 minutes, they're giving you valuable data. They're telling you how to improve if you want to reach them. And it's natural to feel at first like this is an attack on your self-worth, but in reality, it's feedback on your product from their perspective as a consumer. And it's likely the same way you feel when a free product turns out too good to be true. The takeaway I want you to remember from this lesson is that nothing is free. Everything costs something: time, energy, attention. You just need to make sure that the cost is worth it for both you and your audience. Okay, so lesson 3. When you start getting more views, negative comments will follow, guaranteed. And how you handle them will make or break your mental health and motivation as a creator. Most advice tells you to just ignore the haters, but in my opinion, that's little more than surface level garbage advice that isn't actually helpful. And in my experience, there are 3 types of negative comments. The first type is constructive criticism, and these are rare and they're valuable. And they're also the ones that tend to hurt the most because there is often some truth to them. But we have to try to remember that someone took the time to articulate specifically what didn't work for them, which means that these comments are in fact gold. Save them and learn from them, and even respond and thank the person if you can handle it without getting defensive. And while I do try to respond consistently to positive comments, if a constructive critique comes through, I do give myself a full day so I can distance myself from that emotional gut reaction and to respond in a way that acknowledges the merits of both perspectives, which I believe in the end is for the overall good of the channel and our audience here. The second type of negative comments are defense mechanisms, and these are people projecting their own insecurities. This is stupid advice usually means I feel insecure that I haven't been able to figure this out on my own yet, and these have nothing to do with you or your content. On YouTube, I simply click hide the user from the channel, which hides their comment from everyone, but also still lets YouTube count it towards engagement metrics. I do the same on Instagram by simply clicking hide the comments. And the reason I don't actually delete them on either platform is because both platforms don't count negative sentiment against you. Downvotes are just as helpful as upvotes, and negative comments just as helpful as positive ones, in terms of the platform recognizing that your content is engaging and they'll push it out to more people. So go ahead and hide them and silently thank them for their contribution in making your content more discoverable. The third type of negative comments come from what I'm calling audience mismatch. And this was the hardest lesson to learn for me, but it was the most valuable once I did. Some people dislike your content because they fundamentally disagree with your approach or values. And in my case, not all creatives or content creators want to be entrepreneurs or to treat their content as a business. They don't share my goals or values. So the methods I teach are wrong because they're trying to reach a completely different destination. And similar to that, some viewers can't handle the pacing or the style of my videos. Some want instant gratification with rapid fire bullet points, and some people just want the tactics without any of the strategic thinking or context that I take the time to explore in my videos. And as a creator, you have to learn to accept this audience mismatch and to embrace it. In my case, I've learned that I don't actually want viewers in my audience who desire those things. So rather than giving in to the comments that are asking for it, because sometimes it is the negative comments that speak the loudest, I have to keep my mission and long-term strategy in mind. Those who have TikTok brain very rarely will work well with my approach or strategies that I'm teaching here. They also wouldn't make the most of my products, so I don't want them buying them. And if I don't want them buying my products, this means there's no reason to try to attract them by approaching my content differently. The great news is that the creator space is huge and there's no one formula for success on YouTube. Some channels may explode with tutorials and others through entertainment and others with content that breaks every rule in the book or niche. When someone attacks your approach, they might just be on a completely different path. And once I understood this, negative comments stopped being personal. And a general strategy I have for dealing with negative comments, especially the unconstructive kind, are that I created what I call an impact board, where I screenshot some of my favorite positive comments and feedback and thankful messages that I received. And even if you're only getting positive comments every once in a while at the start, it's important to start cataloging them and to go through the motions of saving them and reading them from time to time. Because sometimes it's easy to get desensitized and to forget that there are real humans behind usernames on YouTube. So this impact board is one way that I remind myself that I am indeed making a difference, and to help offset that overwhelming feeling that negative comments can sometimes bring. I don't know about you, but even one negative comment can feel more impactful than 10 positive ones. There is some truth in that, because as humans, we've evolved to have a stronger psychological response to threats and danger, which is why negative comments do in fact affect us much more than positive ones. And taking the time to create this impact board and returning to it when I need to really helps with that. But the last note on this topic before we move on to trap 4, and something that I really want you to take to heart, is that daring to have a distinct perspective that makes people feel something means some people won't like what you do no matter what it is. And that's not just okay, it's essential. If nobody hates what you're doing, nobody will love it either. Okay, so lesson 4. When you're starting out as a creator, everything seems like an opportunity. Should you start a podcast, repackage it for audio and video, create a newsletter, develop a personal website, launch a second or third channel for other types of content, test out a new platform, tool, or system, create a new product, reach out to larger creators for collaborations. Once you recognize these opportunities, which don't get me wrong, they are, it seems like saying no to any of them means giving up growth or leaving money on the table. Maybe that is even true, but nothing compounds better than directional focus. Now, this trap is especially sneaky because it's reinforced by all those big creators that you follow. They make it sound like you're doing it wrong if you're not juggling 5 different content formats across 7 different platforms. What they don't tell you is that they have teams handling all this. They're not sitting alone at their desk trying to be a one-person content factory. They tell you about their optimal morning routine in their videos or in their tweets, but they don't show the 4 people behind the camera actually making it possible. Admittedly, I fell for this trap hard when I first started. I tried to launch my YouTube channel while simultaneously growing my Instagram, tried starting a newsletter, planning a podcast, and outlining a product, along with dozens of other things. Each one seemed necessary, and each one promised to be the key to growth. And I have since found some ways to make these more efficient, which I've talked about in other videos. But even still, I simply didn't have enough time to do everything well. I was spreading myself way too thin, constantly starting new initiatives, but never giving any of them the attention that they needed to truly succeed. And what I learned here was that horizontal expansion kills momentum before you even create it. And every new platform and format or project divides your limited time and energy, and divided attention means mediocre results across the board rather than exceptional results in one area that can be leveraged into making the other areas much easier and quicker once you get to them. The solution I found was that I didn't have to say no to expansion or opportunities. Instead, I just needed to plot them linearly over time rather than horizontally right now. And essentially, you need to plan your growth as a sequence, not as a scatter plot. For example, mastering one platform before adding another, or perfecting one type of content format before introducing a second one. This is different for everyone, but for me that meant first growing my Instagram to over 100,000 followers, then introducing YouTube. It meant waiting to launch my podcast format of content here on YouTube until I hit 10,000 subscribers on this channel with this type of video. This allowed me to really dial in my workflow and gave me the mental bandwidth and time to experiment on the one core thing that I was building at that moment. And of course there are semantics here, and you can't take this to the extreme. For example, not responding to any emails or sending any newsletters for months until you hit a crazy milestone on YouTube. But really, the key is understanding that saying no isn't permanent. It just means saying not yet. These opportunities aren't going anywhere. In fact, they become more valuable the larger you grow your core platform with the first thing that you focus on. Lesson 5 builds on that previous one of feeling like you have to capitalize on every opportunity now, but is even more deceptive because you can fall into it while genuinely believing you're being disciplined. I was ambitious when I started YouTube. I'd seen fast traction with my Instagram because it played directly into my existing skills, creating art and telling stories with well-considered branding, things I'd already been doing professionally for over a decade. So when I decided to get serious about YouTube, I told myself this new channel is going to be my main focus this year. And that sounds disciplined, and I thought that I would see the same results as quickly as I did on Instagram. But where I fooled myself was that my definition of focusing on my channel was conveniently loose. It turned out what I really meant by making that promise to myself was that I would learn a lot of new things, to script long-form videos, to create a second shorts channel, and to repurpose those shorts across platforms like TikTok, something I was completely unfamiliar with. That I would create a second Instagram account that would distribute those same shorts, keeping them separate from my main art account. That I would create a third YouTube channel for podcast type content, since I heard that it's best to keep content formats separate. I would create new lead magnets and downloads for every video to make sure that my audience moves from YouTube into my newsletter. I would create twice a week newsletters to keep in touch with them and to keep delivering value. I would repurpose those newsletters for Substack to reach a new audience over there, and I would create premium products that my audience could use to build their own businesses, all under the umbrella of focusing on my channel. And I patted myself on the back for my focus while actually doing dozens of different things, which many of them required me to learn from scratch. See, what I had done is I created a definition of focus that was convenient for my desire to do everything all at once, but useless for gaining real traction. And the breakthrough for me personally came when I realized that true leverage doesn't come from a vague commitment to something. It comes from getting so good at one thing that it becomes second nature and almost automatic. And that level of mastery only happens after you've created enough of the same type of content or for the same platform that you're not constantly figuring things out. And maybe it also means that you've developed systems, that you've found your voice, or that you've built an audience that knows exactly what to expect. And that's when things get easier and when you can start getting real leverage. But that leverage only comes after a certain amount of repetition on one narrowly defined area. And honestly, I still do many of those other things, but I've trimmed them down to be minimum viable versions of themselves so that I can truly focus the vast majority of my effort into the one thing that will give me the most leverage soonest. This fifth trap isn't about trying to be everywhere or in finding it hard to turn down opportunities like the previous one. It's about lying to yourself about what focus really means. Real focus feels uncomfortably narrow at first, but that's exactly what makes it powerful. Lesson 6. They say you only improve what you measure, and that's exactly why new creators get obsessed with analytics and tracking systems and workflows and optimization. I spent weeks setting up elaborate tracking links and finding tools to A/B test my thumbnails and analyzing traffic sources and obsessing over which tags and descriptions or bios perform the best. I pored over the analytics and I looked for patterns and insights to guide my strategy over what to do next. But the reality was that despite all of that well-intentioned work, I didn't have enough data to make any meaningful decisions yet. Those A/B tests were on videos with dozens or maybe at best hundreds of views. The link tracking was on just a handful of clicks. See, this is a trap that looks like smart strategy, but it is actually just procrastination in disguise. If you're doing this like I was, you're spending your limited time understanding signals before you have enough of them to really matter. No self-respecting researcher would ever make conclusions based on a sample size of just a few dozen or 100 people. Yet creators make massive strategic pivots based on the performance of 2 videos where nearly every variable is different. And the truth is, Optimization is a problem of scale. Link tracking, conversion attribution, and detailed performance metrics do matter, they really do, but they matter most when you have significant traffic. When you're just starting out, more often than not, they're just a distraction from what actually matters. Learning to create content consistently and improving your craft. Way too many creators agonize over which day of the week to post, which exact time gets the most views, or whether their video description is perfectly optimized to reach the most people. Meanwhile, they're creating one video a month and wondering why they're not growing. Here's what I learned these past 3 months on my road to 10K subscribers. In the beginning, quantity trumps optimization. Get the content out there, build a body of work, generate enough data that patterns actually mean something. Once you have that traction, once you're consistently getting thousands of views, then optimization makes sense. Then those small percentage improvements translate to meaningful growth. But until then, focus on the fundamentals and the basics. Ask yourself, is my content valuable? Am I actually posting consistently, or just constantly working on trying to post consistently? Am I improving and getting faster with each video? These questions matter infinitely more than whether you should post at 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. on Tuesday or Wednesday, or whether version A or B of your link clicked 3 times more than the other. Get the traffic first, then worry about optimizing it. Lesson 7. YouTube, the creator economy, and the online education space in general is a beautiful thing. At this point, you can learn anything you want to from someone who just solved your exact issue halfway across the world. And as new creators, we have plenty of questions and challenges, so we find ourselves desperate for that knowledge, and the internet is happy to provide endlessly, whether it's books or courses or masterclasses or cohorts, whatever it is. And frankly, despite some of these being empty and a waste of time and money, many of them are incredibly helpful. And once you get the taste of a really powerful book or channel or course and the unlocks that it gives you, it feels almost like a cheat code, and it's something that you want to keep exploiting. And I fell for this trap hard, and yes, it is a trap. I'd spend hours watching YouTube strategy videos and taking courses on audience building and reading books on storytelling and signing up for countless newsletters, all of which I would actually read, all while barely creating anything myself. We've all heard the sayings that the more you know, the better, or that knowledge is power, but I'd argue that that's not quite right. I'd say that applied knowledge is power, and that everything else is just potential energy that's useless until it's converted into action. The problem with the learning trap is that it feels productive. You're technically doing something related to your creator journey. You're investing in yourself. You're learning from experts. But if you're not immediately applying what you learn, you're just collecting information that will evaporate before you ever use it. Think about when you learned to ride a bike. Did you spend 6 months studying the physics of balance, or reading books on proper pedaling techniques and watching videos about optimal handbar grip? Of course not. You got on the bike, fell a few times, and figured it out through practice. And creator skills largely work in the same way. You learn by doing, not by knowing. And what I found most effective was implementing a simple rule. Learn something, then apply that thing immediately before learning something else. Watch a video about better hooks, write 3 hooks for your next video before watching anything else. Take a course on camera presence and how to speak more naturally with a lens staring at you. Film yourself practicing those techniques the very same day. During my master's program where I studied higher education, I learned that one of the most established principles in learning theory is that without application, retention plummets way more than you think. Within a week, you'll forget 90% of what you learned if you don't put it into practice. That's why the most successful creators aren't the ones who know the most. They're the ones who apply what they know most often. Just remind yourself that your success depends far less on what you know and far more on what you actually do with that knowledge. And this trap and the lesson that it taught me is the exact reason why the Creator MVP program that I'll be releasing soon isn't a huge course packed with hundreds of hours of videos and endless text that explore concepts or ideas just to inflate the size of the course to increase its perceived value. Because if I did that, you would never actually get the impact out of the program. Sure, you would learn some things if I did that, but as I said, it's applied knowledge that is power. Instead, I'm designing it so you can take the full program and put it into action by launching the minimum viable version of your creator business in a single weekend. And that, I believe, is far more valuable to new creators than a huge bloated course. So if that sounds interesting and you want to get early access bonuses to that program, let me know by signing up for the waitlist in the description. Lesson 8. One of the biggest things holding back new creators is the fear of making mistakes and the great lengths that they'll go to in order to avoid them. You'll obsess over getting everything perfect before hitting publish. You'll record the same idea 5 times because you stumbled over a word, and you'll delay launching because your camera or lighting isn't professional enough, or that your website isn't ready yet. But the truth is, you're not afraid of making mistakes. You're afraid of potential judgment or what people may think of you if you do. And it isn't about the mistake itself. And look, I get it. I did all of those things too, but here's what I didn't understand at the start. People aren't attracted to perfection. They're attracted to authenticity and growth because those are what are relatable. You will release videos that flop. You'll send newsletters with broken links. You'll give advice that you later realize wasn't quite right. And you'll look back at your early content and you'll cringe. All of that is inevitable no matter how much you prepare or delay. And that's okay because it's valuable. These are signals that you're growing and that you're improving. And I can tell you from experience that in my mentorship sessions or when I'm coaching a younger creative or creator, some of the most valuable conversations that we have where I see a mental unlock in my students are when I'm explaining to them what I got wrong when I was in their shoes. And I've found that the bigger the mistake, the more that I was embarrassed at the time, the more that they feel seen. And these revelations, especially in the form of content, work so well because they show that I'm human and they demonstrate growth. And most importantly, they help viewers avoid the same mistakes, which is far more valuable than generic, unrelatable advice when you haven't proven that you've been there yourself. See, the truth is, a creator life built around avoiding mistakes is a creator journey that will stagnate. Progress requires experimentation. It depends on it. And experiments are still useful when they fail. So instead of fearing mistakes, use them as fuel, collect as many as possible as early as possible. Document your journey, including the wrong turns, and share what you're learning in real time. Your audience will appreciate the transparency and you'll build a much stronger connection with them than if you only show up when everything's perfect. Now, I don't want to promote intentional sloppiness here. Even worse, don't fake your mistakes. I cringe every time a creator thinks that they're being clever by accidentally forwarding a discount code or early access to their product. Faked or intentional mistakes are transparent and damaging to your brand and authenticity in the long term. So please don't think that's a shortcut. The lesson here is rather about embracing the reality that growth is messy and that it's beneficial to let your audience in on that process. That makes for much more compelling content than pretending that you've got it all figured out when you don't. Lesson 9. Just create what you want. Make content that you're passionate about. Don't worry about the algorithm. I see this advice everywhere, and while it sounds liberating, it's missing a critical part of the equation. You absolutely do have the freedom to create whatever you want, but you don't have freedom from the laws of cause and effect. I see creators, and especially those who come from creative fields, constantly asking why they aren't growing and why they aren't earning money and why no one finds their videos, and at the same time, they refuse to change anything about their content. They want to keep doing exactly what they're doing, but somehow get different results. It's like ordering a taco and calling it a bad pizza. You can't expect pizza results from taco ingredients. And this doesn't mean that you need to sell your soul and to chase trends that you hate, but it does mean understanding that content creation exists within an attention-based economy. If you treat your channel purely as a personal project with no consideration for what your audience wants or needs, that's completely fine, but then you can't complain about the lack of growth. For me, both on Instagram building my audience of 130,000 And here on YouTube, where I've now hit 10K, in both places, growth only happened when I found the intersection between what I enjoyed creating and what an audience actually wanted. And to find that intersection, it required honest self-reflection about my own values and what I was willing to adjust and what was non-negotiable. Struggling creators who call out those who find success as just selling out are being reductive, and they're being lazy because they don't want to put in the work to make their passion work. It isn't easy to be strategic about how you express your creativity within constraints. Those constraints might be platform optimizations or audience expectations or current market realities, but they exist whether you acknowledge them or not. The most successful creators I know are the ones who understand the rules well enough to work within them creatively or to break them intentionally rather than accidentally. Creative and creator freedom doesn't mean absence from constraints. True creative freedom comes from understanding the game well enough to play it on your own terms. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to watch this one next, where I break down more strategies of what it takes to build a successful creator business this year. Until then, thanks for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one.